Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement 2. As you can see by the package here, it's a super mini mail call, and let's get right to it. This comes from Ross in Snohomish, Washington. Sorry, I always struggle to say that. I'm pretty sure what Ross has sent me here are a bunch of components. Oh, and it goes without saying, hi to all my Washington viewers. I always gotta say that, right? All right, under all this packing material, there are a bunch of little boxes here that have components in them and stuff's all wrapped up. So let me get this all out of the box. I have a real problem with organization here in the basement, and well, this isn't going to help the situation. So we'll just take a quick look at this stuff here. So we got some microchip picks, although these are very cool looking little packages though. Anyone recognize those? I don't really know pick stuff that well. Those look really cool though. Obviously, as you can tell by these particular devices here, these are all erasable with UV light, unlike the newer PICs, of course, that use EEPROMs inside for programming them. And these you have to erase, and then you can program them. Here's another box here. Just seems to have more of these PIC microcontrollers, or I don't even know if these ones are PIC. These ones actually say PIC on them. 16L, whatever. It's so similar number to that, so I'm assuming, yeah, all PICs. And in this box, obviously it has the logo for microchip right on here, so I'm assuming this is going to be more of them. Wow, sort of a lifetime supply of these picks here. Cool. And what's in this one? PLCC picks and SOIC. I think that's what this one's called. Okay, awesome as well. And this one here looks like more of the same, except quad flat pack. I think that's what that called, QFP. And of course, PLCCs as well. And another box, quad flat packs. And this box here, more of these UV erasable types. And maybe the last box, I think. Got a whole little assortment here of SOICs, I think they're called again. And we finally have the last box here, which I think I opened upside down. There we go. And yes, indeed, some more picks. This one looks like a little AT Tiny equivalent. I am much more familiar with the AT Mega stuff than picks. Okay, well that obviously leaves us with these bags with just miscellaneous parts. These look like some sockets. Awesome. Oh, I missed this box here. Yep, we got some more picks. So let me slide this stuff out of the way and we'll just dump out the contents here. Okay, we have some of the 40 pins here arranged. So we have a 6502 from Rockwell, a 6845 CRTC. I can't remember which Intel part this is, but it's part of the XT motherboard chipset, like it's the interrupt or interval timer or something like that. 8250, I'm pretty sure this is a parallel IO chip. We have a Z80 SIO or serial IO chip. We have this IC here, which I am not familiar with. Is this an Atari part number by chance? Yes, that appears to be a Sally chip. Well, that's pretty cool because those aren't super common. So I'll just write Sally on there. I know it's a little hard to read, but it is readable. So yeah, the main CPU from the Atari 8-bit line of computers. It's like a 6502 inside, but it has some minor changes. I can't remember exactly what they are, but obviously, I don't think you can just take one of these regular 6502s, here's another one, and replace it with the Sally. I don't think they're necessarily interchangeable, a lot like the 6510. We got, so yep, another 6502, another 6502, Rockwell parts again, another 8255, just like the motherboard chipset that is. This here, 8742, I'm assuming this is a microcontroller of some kind, like an Intel microcontroller, programmable obviously because it's UV erasable. We have a keyboard BIOS here, another 6502, and another SIO chip. We have Western Digital controller. I think this is a hard drive controller IC for like MFM type hard drives. I can't remember off the top of my head. Looks like we have another Atari IC here, so CO12294. And we have a Pokey chip. Now these, of course, oh, it looks like there's a replacement for the Pokey now. That's cool. So yeah, sound and IO and $75. Yeah, they're used. Oh, even this chip here. Whoa, the price is wild. So it's used on the Atari 8-bit line of computers, but it's also used on arcade machines like Tempest, I guess. So therefore it is in demand. I don't know how often these fail, but that's pretty sweet to have a spare. So that's going to get Pokey written on it here. I should probably be using my white marker, but that's okay. I'll use this one here. And I'm going to stick this, that's hard to read, but that's good enough. I'll make sure to keep the Sally and this Pokey chip together, as they might be useful for future repairs. as of course all these parts are. NEC 7201. What's this chip do? Seems like it's a protocol controller, serial communication chip. Not 100% sure. Yeah, don't really recognize this serial communication chip. Not anything that I'm familiar with, unless it's somehow compatible with the, what is it, 16550 or 82550? Oh, 82550. Didn't we just have one of those 82550s, I think, which is a serial I/O chip? I can't remember, and I don't even know if this is pin compatible with those other chips. Okay, we have the next little line of chips here. So a 6522, so a CIA or PIA, I can't remember which one that is, but used in all sorts of old 8-bit micros. And then we have a MOS 6530. Can't remember what this is exactly. This is the Riot chip. Is this used on the Atari 2600? Can't quite remember. Bidirectional data pins. Oh wait, Kim 1. Ah, whoa, okay. Well, that's pretty cool that that's there. I should probably keep this separate because that's one of the more rare and interesting chips that's in this lot, I think. Next up is 6502, I guess, but the markings on this are very difficult to read. Looks like that's a Rockwell logo and 1978, maybe 3rd week, 7th week, something like that. But yeah, really old 6502, but still in the plastic package, which is pretty cool. Made in the Philippines. Okay, then we have a Hitachi 4650, which is really like a 6845. I think it's basically 100% compatible with that, so another CRTC. We have this IC here, an Intel microcontroller, I guess, of some type. Is this, oh no, it's an 8255, okay. So we have several of those already. Okay, we have another Atari IC here. So I take it some kind of an Atari computer was disassembled at some point, which resulted in these chips being mixed in here. This is obviously a 6520, so I don't think there's anything special, even though it's got the Atari part number on there. But I'll just keep it with these chips, just so they're all together. Okay, next up, we have a Z80 CPU, another 6845 CRTC. Is this another, really hard to read? We have an 8237. I don't know off the top of my head, but that is probably something, again, from the IBM PC chipset, like DMA controller or something like that. Next up, it's a Fujitsu 8086. Kind of cool. I have one 8086 computer. That's something I just don't have a lot of, so kind of cool to have a spare CPU there. Next up is a Siemens 8088-1. Does that mean it's a 4.77 megahertz part? Possibly. Another 6522, another 6522. I'm assuming this is maybe a keyboard controller. Not totally sure. And this is flipped around here. Is this a floppy drive controller chip? Yeah, it's a NEC 765 compatible chip here. Everyone seemed to make these. Very common floppy drive controller on older systems. MFM compatible, but not high density. It's just 250 kilobit maximum, that is. It does support FM, though. FM encoding, so single density or double density. Okay, we have more 40-pin dips here. Another 6522. We have another 6502, 6522 again. An Atari 6502. I wonder what exactly this came out of, an arcade machine maybe? Because obviously the 8-bit machines did not use regular 6502s, right? I mean, am I mistaken here? So the Sally, yeah, has a totally different part number than this 14377. And then we have another one of these Riot chips here, 6530, so I guess I'll separate that out. It doesn't have the cool ceramic package that this one does. I don't know if that's a date there, 76, 36th week, and 32nd week of 1979. Maybe. It's funny how the date code is sort of reversed how we're used to. Usually the year is first, not the week number. All right, another 6522 and another one of these, I don't know, I don't think this is a floppy controller. Again, I think it's an MFM type controller, part of a chipset at least. Looks like we have another 6522. And then we have some smaller ICs here. So another, I don't know what chip this is, I can't remember, like IRQ controller or something like that. And then we have some Z80 clock timer chips or timer controllers. I forgot what CTC stands for. Typical construction, if you have a Z80 computer, might have a bunch of these Zilog parts in them. We have another chip from a XT motherboard and another one as well. And then this Intel chip here, Very hard to read what this is. Ah, it's a flash chip. Okay, Intel flash. I've heard that these are kind of dying, as in like, well, they're losing the contents of the flash memory that's installed in them. So potentially if you have something flashed into here, some code, like a ROM code or whatever, that you're losing the content of these, which is potentially bad. Okay, well that was everything that was in this one bag, which I think had all the larger ICs in it. Looks like these other things are different form factors, like regular smaller dips, and this one has, looks like surface mount, or sorry, PLCC stuff. So let's take a look at this next. Okay, what do we got here? So yeah, this is the kind of stuff that's on MFM controllers again. Chips and technologies. So it's hard to know with these without doing some kind of Googling or whatever, but these could easily just be from a motherboard that was salvaged. And as you can see there, we got some pins that are bashed up a little bit, but nothing that can't be saved. So 303, 305, 306, yeah, this would have been like off of a 286 or 386 motherboard, something around then. So it's handy to have these because I definitely have had motherboards through the basement that use these types of chips. Here's an Atmel 27124 EEPROM, not quite sure which one it is. The AT series, I always get confused. Another part of that chipset though. This chip here looks like it could be one of those video RAM chips for the SE30 that I needed. Oh no, it's not, I don't think. What is this exactly? I don't know, from 1981. But that package, which is like the slightly wider than the normal dip package, like this is a normal dip package here. So you can kind of see that these are bigger, and that is just like the chips that were on the SE30, which were dual ported video memory. So there's at least two of those General Instrument chips. And then we have an AMD, yeah, I don't, these are not familiar at all to me. Is this like part of that bit slice architecture that AMD had? Looks like we have a PAL chip here, so that means it's programmed. It's not actually, might as well just recycle this because there's no way to know what that is, and it's not going to be particularly useful. Could have been from like this motherboard that these chips, well, not these, I don't think, but this could have easily been salvaged off that. We have a couple LM324s, and what are these, like little op amps or something? Wow, not very readable. And then whatever this HCNR201 is from HP, don't know. If anyone knows, comment down below. And I just noticed that this AMD chip here is not from a bit slice thing. This is a PAL chip as well. So that means it's not reprogrammable and it's unknown to know what code is actually on there. Oh, I didn't notice this bag here appears to be full of large ICs, so let's look through these. Okay, another SIO chip for the Z80 architecture, 6845s, 6522s, another 6520. Came out of the Atari systems. I'll just put it with the other one that we already have. We have a 6820, which I think is like the 6520. It's just designed for, well, generally to be used with 6800 CPUs as opposed to 6502s. 8042. Was this a keyboard controller by chance or some kind of microcontroller? Don't know if we can use that. A very old 6502 from 1979 here in plastic package. Very cool. An actual Z80 CPU. Is that the first one we've seen so far? Maybe. 6845, looks like from 1980. We have an SGS Italian-made Z80B CPU. That's pretty sweet. Looks like it's from 1983. Another CPU from 1987, made by Zilog themselves. An Oki Japan chip with Atari branding on here. All right, and we're dealing here with the Antic, another very useful chip for the old 8-bit line of computers. Awesome. Obviously not as rare as some of the other ones because it's only $8 there, but yeah, cool. So I just put Antic on there and this one gets moved to the other pile. We have an 8287 Mathco processor next. It's one of the -6s, which means it runs at, I think, 6 megahertz max. Not great if you want high performance math on your old system. An 8088-2, so this is one of the faster ones, runs up to what, 8 megahertz or something like that. Another 8086, very cool. We have another Z80A CPU from Zilog here. Another serial I/O controller, this time from SGS. And finally an A250, which I think, now that I think about it, is the serial port chip that you would use on old PCs. And this is generally not buffered or anything. 16550, I think is the one. Although, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, this could be something else. I'm just mixing up these numbers. Next up, it looks like we have a brand new surface mount 68000 here. Nice, 8 megahertz part from Hitachi. Never used, or if it was in a socket. Another Z80 CTC. And then we have another Intel chip here, some part of the PC chipset. And 4028, I can't remember off the top of my head what those do, but I'm gonna keep these in a separate bag, any of these 4000 series that I find, because I really need to catalog these. In fact, I need to catalog all these chips, which is one of the problems I really have down here in the basement, is trying to keep track of all these chips and find them when I need them. So what I need to do is just, yeah, spend a long time organizing and like go through all my chips, inventory them, put them in a spreadsheet, and then at least take things like CPUs and organize those into, you know, one bag like this. It's just full of, say, 40-pin DIP IC CPUs. So if I need a 6502, I can go to a bag full of 6502s or Intel 8088s, you know, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so what's left now are just lots of ICs like this. I guess there's random 40-pin things in there. So 8088, I'll put that with the 40 pins, but I'm assuming we just have tons of TTL logic here. And zooming in on this, that appears to be absolutely the case here, which is handy. I just need to, I don't know, figure out a way to organize these so I can actually find the chips when I need them. Like if I need a 251, where do I go to get that? Well, when I have tons and tons like this, the searching process is not efficient and not good. And believe me, I have tons more of chips loose like this. So I really need to come up with a system to organize it. And I think I'm going to be doing something with those drawers. I can't see any in the view of the camera right now, but I have a bunch of these drawers. I think I'm going to like mount some on the side of the shelves here, and then at least start to organize these TTL logic chips into bins, meaning one drawer might be 7400 all the way through 7409, for instance. So 00 to 09, and then the next drawer will be 10 to 20, and you know, so on and so forth. Problem is, I need to do that kind of separation of all the chips first, because what I don't know is once you get to the higher numbers, there just are big gaps. There wouldn't be any sense to have like 74200 to 74210, because I don't really think there are any chips in there, or if there are, it's like one or two. It's not like the lower numbers where there are lots and lots of chips. So I sort of need to figure out that binning process. In fact, if anyone watching has a good feeling for, you know, if I were going to try to go through all the chips I had, like all the random chips like this, what would be a good methodology to doing that binning? It's not really possible or feasible for me to have one drawer per TTL logic chip. There just aren't enough drawers in my basement here. I don't have like a whole wall that I could devote to this. Because if that were the case, and I start finding some more of a new chip, and they're, you know, one chip per, well, not one chip, but one particular part number per drawer, I could just move them, you know, make a space by moving the drawers around, and then, you know, fill in the gap with that chip. So I need to do binning. I just don't know how to do the binning. And I need a better system than I have now, which is not any system right now. What I kind of have are these foam pads, like the anti-static foam. They're just filled with the chips all laid out, you know, inserted into it. And then I can look through all the chips. They're not even sorted. Like they're not numerically, you know, low to high. They're just randomly applied there. So that's why the bins, the little drawers would be really helpful, because at least if I've done that with all of these TTL logic chips and I know I need something that's like a 74, I can just like go to the drawer that contains that number in the range and then dig, you know, I could dump the contents out, dig through those chips and hopefully find the chip that I need. And then when I get new chips like this donation here that came in, I can just, you know, spend time and maybe have a helper like read a chip off and give it to me, and then I can just stick it in the appropriate drawer, you know, and do that sorting. That would be pretty efficient. So yeah, like imagine I have, say, 50 drawers to devote to 74 LS logic, and I would combine the different types of chips as well, like ALS and HCT, whatever, into the, you know, I would go just by the numbers that is on the chip. If I have 50 drawers to devote to that, what would be a good way to do that binning that I can start to try to gain some organization to my life here, based on the number of parts that are typically in each of these bins, so that I can try to evenly spread the chips throughout these drawers. Hopefully that's making sense what I'm trying to do here. At least for the larger 40-pin dips, that's a bit easier, because I don't mind, you know, going through all these chips and just being like CPU, you know, 8-bit CPU, 8-bit CPU, put all those together, and then the ones that are like part of PC chipsets, putting those together, and like these Atari ones that I've separated out here, I can put those in a little bag that says, you know, Atari chips, for instance. That's easy enough. And then I keep it on a spreadsheet so I know that I have them when I go to look for one during a repair, you know, that kind of thing. Okay, so that was the first bag of the small chips. I just wanted to kind of take a quick glance here at these. I want to see if I have any like RAM chips or something. They might be RAM just sort of mixed in here, but so far all of this just looks like more TTL logic. I was just sort of thinking, actually, another way that I could possibly do the binning would be to separate the chips by their numbers, but also by the number of pins. Because obviously these come in, you know, several different pin counts. And that might be a way to help, although maybe that's probably not actually helpful. And here is another bag, and I'm gonna say that this is just more of the same. And it is. Got something in a little tube here. LS245s. Looks like we have a few terminating resistors or some type of resistors of some kind here. And here's a 54 LS154. This is, if I recall, what, an address decoder or something like that, or it's like a select chip. I have several of these, and they're definitely used. I think the Commodore PET uses these. Here's another one right here, starting for LS154. So these are pretty cool, and I think they're pretty expensive, or maybe they're not, but when these break, well, it basically renders your computer inoperative, because I think this does things like select ROM chips and stuff on the PET, so it's always good to have these. Luckily, I do have a few of these floating around, and I have them inventoried as well so I can find them, but when I sort these, those will need to go with the other ones that I have, along with all these other chips. Now, one of the things about organization that's difficult for me is that it's quite time-consuming and not interesting content for making a video, for instance. And obviously that's where I make a living, is by making videos that you're watching, like this one right here. So it's not really a good use of my time to be organizing chips. But on the other hand, when I'm doing repairs, I absolutely need to be able to find stuff, so I kind of need to do it. All right, well, we just have another bag here full of random TTL 74LS logic. So far, I haven't spotted any DRAM, which is fine. I luckily have quite a lot of DRAM. But I at least like to try to separate the DRAM out, because clearly DRAM is something that does go seemingly bad relatively frequently, and it's obviously common enough that it's easy to separate into bags. So I have bags that say like 41, 64, stuff like that. All right, this one seems to have a bunch more of the 154 address decoders. Yep, that's awesome. I'll have like a lifetime supply of those. What's this? Zero power RAM. So there's obviously like a battery backed up RAM. It's funny that there's no pins bent up into this top parts of the batteries in here. It must connect up to the top of the IC package itself. Very unfamiliar with this particular thing here, but do not dispose of in fire implies that this absolutely does have a little lithium battery in it. Otherwise, we just have a bunch more TTL logic. Here's one from 1978. I was just a few years old when that was made. All right, this bag here appears to have a bunch of surface mount picks and PLCCs and stuff. So I'll put these with the other picks. And in another bag, we have a few more picks. Looks like 3 of those. Looks like we have 3 Z80 serial controller chips. These AMD parts, not sure what these are. Is this part of the bit slice stuff? I'm not familiar. 5380. Is that a SCSI controller IC, actually? Now I think about it. I don't know what these larger ones are, though. AM9516. These always feel bit slicey to me. That one, I don't know. Yeah, 5380. Let me look that one up. Yep, there it is. SCSI controller interface. Pretty sure these AM5380s are used on Macintosh Pluses and SEs for their SCSI controller. That's what these are used on, among other things. Amigas, I've seen these on Amigas as well, I think. As far as this 9516A, what? Controller bus interface? No idea. No idea what this stuff is used. Universal DMA controller. Right, I don't know. Maybe you know, maybe you recognize these, but I certainly don't, off the top of my head at least. Like a doofus, I had the bags that I've looked through sitting off to the side, and 2 of them just dumped over onto the floor. Loose ICs onto the floor. Okay, stand by, please. All right, we're back. That was relatively unpleasant. Luckily, none of them got stuck in my feet. I used a flashlight to kind of shine it sideways on the floor, which would, I mean, I have dark carpet, which makes it really hard to see things like this on the floor. Anyhow, hopefully I don't get a chip stuck in my foot at some point in the future. Right, we have a couple crystal oscillators. Those are always good. I'll just separate those out. And a whole bunch more regular dip ICs. A couple more crystals there. Looks like I found an 82284. I have to look up what that is, but I think this is maybe a timing controller or something like that for the IBM PC or XT motherboards, things like that. 6887. Wonder what that is. I think because it says 1897, I think that's the part. And I think that's used on the Apple II motherboards. Yeah, this is absolutely. It's a 3-state buffer inverter. And I think it's only 4 bits wide. So instead of the like LS245s used on everything later, oh yeah, there it is. Look, ooh, $14 each. Ouch. The later chips that are bigger, let's see if I have one here. That's just like a, oh, that's a gal. Oh, that's useful. Those gals are great. Anyways, as opposed to a regular 245 like this one, this is an 8-bit wide version of this. And I'm pretty sure the original Apple IIs used these. And there were a bunch of them for the address lines, for the DMA functionality, and then also for the data bus lines. So that's why it's really, really important for me to actually go through all of these chips here when I do my sorting and pull these out, because they do go bad occasionally. I've had to fix these before, but they're hard to find. And as you saw on that listing, they're quite expensive. And they unfortunately just sort of have the same amount of pins as other things, like whatever this is here, 34 something, I don't know what that is. They can unfortunately be a little hard to find when you actually need one. So that's why going through all this stuff is so important, so I can pick these types of chips out. I'm going to actually save this one and that one just because they are not super common, and I'll save this gal as well. I have a separate bag for gals already, and I'm just going to have to kind of go through this stuff and pull out all the useful stuff. Looks like right here I just found a 214 SRAM, kind of a brand I'm unfamiliar with. And I found another little Intel ceramic chip here. Is this one for the XTs? Oh look, DRAM as well. 256 kilobit times 1. So it's probably worth saving that, because that could be something that's like one of those clock chips. And I'll save this DRAM over here. So when thinking about the sorting methodology that I would use here, I think the first thing I would probably want to do with all my loose chips is separate them out into 74LS or 74 series stuff, you know, in a big pile. And then other types of things like DRAMs or like Intel chips like this, or GALs, things like that. The little, these things here, these little resistor things, you know, put those all in piles. And then I can start to work on organizing and sorting those piles. Like I said, I have a place for GALs already that I don't need to, you know, sort them any further than just the gals. I can put those together with the other gals that I have. The DRAM as well, it's really easy just to put the like 256 kilobit DRAM with the other 256 kilobit. And then chips like the 40 series chips like this, that would go into yet another pile, and that would be for later sorting as well. I certainly don't need these that often, although I do occasionally, and it'd be nice if at least those chips were in one place. All right, and that's it for everything that Ross sent in. So thanks very much, Ross. There's obviously quite a few treasures in this, not to mention all of those good LS, original TTL level parts that I can use to fix old computers. It's getting harder and harder to find the original LS parts. I think a lot of them have been replaced with like HCT and ALS, things that are way faster than these old chips. And sometimes the design of the computer is such that you really do need to use an LS part for the timing to work just right. So it's really good to have these originals. And now it's just a matter of trying to figure out how to sort this stuff, all of this, but all the other stuff that people sent in that are loose chips like this, because believe me, there's a lot. I have many bags that are sitting around just like this, just filled with chips. And then from there, really try to figure out how to get this stuff into a way that I can at least quickly find it. Because a lot of times right now when I'm looking for a specific LS part, if it's something that's not super common, like a 240 or 245 or a 00 or something like that, it can take me quite a while to locate one. And I might have to go to like spare motherboards and scrap boards and actually desolder chips from those just to harvest the things I need. Even though there's a good chance that the chip I need is in a bag like one of these, it's just I can't readily find it. So that's a big problem I have. And I'm open to all suggestions that people have about how to optimize and make the process of getting this stuff cataloged as easy as possible and make it where I can actually use the stuff that I have. So thank you very much again, Ross, for sending this stuff in, and let's get something else to open up on this mail call episode. All right, the next package we have is from John in, it looks like Davenport, Florida. Hi to all my Florida viewers. Looks like we have some candy in here. And I just noticed looking at the package, I've had this since January of 2024, so it's been like 10 months. Luckily, I've mentioned this a few times, the basement stays a nice like 70 degrees all year round. That's like, what, 21 degrees Celsius? It doesn't really fluctuate. That means that things like candy, which are kept in cool, dark boxes and stuff, generally are fine. And hopefully there's not too much in here. Let's see, there's some more here. Ooh, gingerbread cookie clusters, kind of appropriate for the holidays. And unfortunately, this has an expiration date that has passed by only a month. And let's see the Haribos here. These have an expiration date of 2025, so those are still good. And let's get everything out of here. I think that was it for the candy. It was just extra packing material, which is awesome. Looks like we have a letter here. Oh, looks like we actually have these diabetes-friendly like snack bars as well. I do advise if you're sending in anything to the mail call and you add some food or anything like that or to it, just please write that on the outside of the box. So I know to open that sooner than letting it sit around for a long time. And you know what? John wrote perishable, literally right here on the box. And I completely missed it. So I really do apologize for that, John. You did exactly, literally what I asked everyone to do. You did it, and I completely missed it. Maybe write it in like big letters, like food or put snacks or something like that, just so I know. Because unfortunately, it was just a small perishable. Here, if I cover the address and stuff, it was right there there by my thumb here, which I obviously missed. So sorry about that, John. But as I mentioned, because it's nice and cool down here, even stuff that potentially has expired. Let's see if these snack bars have a date on them. Yes, okay, these actually have another couple months of expiration date on these as well. So I will just eat everything relatively quickly and not let it all go to waste. And since it's been down here in the basement and not stored in a hot or really excessively cold place, I think that it's probably just fine. All right, so the bars that I was talking about were these. Is this coconut? All right, unfortunately, I am not a big fan of coconut. Let's just see how these taste here. They look fine. The chocolate looks absolutely no problem. It's not like it's expired or anything. And of course, the date is still months away. And like I said, good climate they've been stored in. It actually tastes fine. It's just coconut. And I'm not a big fan of coconut. I actually really like coconut flavor in like a curry, like I say a Thai curry or something that has like coconut milk in there. That's totally fine. But it's the pieces of coconut, which are kind of like sawdusty, that I'm just not a big fan of. And I know a lot of people are, but that is just not my thing. What's cool about these though, of course, is they have a bunch of the sugar substitute stuff in them. So one of these bar per serving, whatever the serving size is, one bar. Yeah, one bar has 2 grams of net carbs plus a bunch of fiber. That's pretty good. For me as a diabetic, John was obviously thinking about me, not sending in stuff that would send my blood sugar skyrocketing. The Haribos, on the other hand, are just the normal Haribos, which are great. I'll eat those pretty quickly. They won't last. In fact, I just had to restock on some gummy bears from the supermarket, that is, because I had run out, and I do have to eat that stuff when I have low blood sugar. So Haribos will go pretty quickly. And these milk chocolate gingerbread cookie clusters, let's take a look at these. These look pretty awesome. Soft, creamy gingerbread caramel with gingerbread cookies and milk chocolate. They've sort of... they are a little consolidated up to the top of the package. And I think what happened there wasn't anything in the basement here, but of course in transport, this came from Florida. This stuff sits inside hot trucks and things like that. You know, ground shipping, of course, which means that things kind of congeal. And so we have a bit of a congealed food product here. Doesn't mean it's not still good though. Let's break off a piece here. Oh yeah, that actually still tastes absolutely delicious. That's really, really good. I probably have a bunch of food and chocolate on my teeth now. So I need to not smile or go brush my teeth before I do much more recording here on the channel. All right, let's take a look at the letter here. Hi, Adrian. First, I want to thank you for what you do. You've really encouraged me to up my skills in electronic repairs. I've been in PC repair since the age of 14, but I've never really felt comfortable doing any electronic side work until I started watching your videos. And I've recently been able to do some board level work thanks to the confidence your videos have given me. That is amazing. I'm so glad to hear that's exactly why I do these videos. I've included a few things you might like: a composite modded Famicom with a copy of Galaxian. What? There's a Famicom here? That's it right there. That is so freaking cool. I do not have an original Famicom. That's so cool. With a copy of Galaxian, a Raspberry Pi 3B with 32-gig card, Raspbian OS preloaded, and a separated 512-gig card with Recalbox. I'm not sure what that is, installed. 1 terabyte SATA drive, which I believe I clean. Okay, cool. Must be, oh yeah, SATA, so internal, I guess. And some snacks I bought at the time of this letter, but I hope you enjoy them. Be careful with your sugar. Thank you very much, John, for thinking of me. Look at this, I'm getting chocolate on things. That was from the little clusters. We have a page break, which is hilarious. Thanks again, and I hope to send you some more stuff in the future. John, thank you very much, John. Freaking awesome. A Famicom, that is super awesome. Okay, let's take a look at this. So it was this last week that I opened up MSX computer on the channel here, which means I have that little step down transformer, which is perfect because I know these things do not like to get, they have AC power supplies, I'm trying to say. And the voltage regulator in here, it does get exposed to quite a bit of excessive heat, having to dissipate the extra current because the original AC transformer, oh, look at this. This is so freaking awesome. What's interesting here is I have plenty of NES consoles, but you can't plug US NES cartridges into Famicoms, right? The connector here is different. Even though the pinout is, well, the pinout is actually different too, but it's the same signals. You just need a little adapter. So I can't get my multi-cart were to just plug into here. I have, of course, an EverDrive for my NESs, and I can't use that in it. So I'm really glad you included at least one game, because otherwise I'd have potentially no way to actually play anything. So as is usual with Famicoms or family computers, it's the original NES. The controllers are fixed, even though it does have this 15-pin connector here that allows you to plug in external controllers or the keyboard and things like that. So a lot of games actually support having third-party controllers plugged into here. So it, supports these controllers, and then additionally another player 1 and 2 controller plugged into here. So 4 controllers actually work on the NES, and on a regular NES, these signals are exposed on the connector on the bottom of the original, the US and I guess Europe NES. So you could make an adapter to go from that bottom connector to plug in 4 controllers in the old Famicom style. And I think some of the original games, the Japanese games, actually support having multiple, well, more than 2 players using like something plugged into the front of the original family computer here, along with the built-in controllers. But games like NES, Tetris, allows you to play as player 1 either with the built-in controllers here or the external controllers. And I can't remember on the US NES, I'm pretty sure that the 2 ports on the front are wired up to be the same as these built-in controllers. But because, say, someone in Japan might have bought like the external large arcade control stick to play Tetris, it needs to support both inputs, right? And that is possible with the US one as well. So I'll probably need to find one of those adapters for the Famicom to plug in something like my EverDrive, or I suppose I just buy a new EverDrive that is for this. Now this machine here, obviously we have some yellowing, very typical with these. The plastic here should be this kind of light cream color, not this. But otherwise this thing, just could use a little bit of a clean. Looks to be in really good shape. Now when it comes to the composite mod, yeah, originally these only had composite outputs. So I think there was an RCA jack right here, and you selected between channel 1 and 2, which is a Japanese NTSC kind of standard. It's a little bit different channel spacing than here in the US. If I recall, channel 1 and 2 in Japan shows up in North America on like cable TV channel 92 or something like that, or 95 or something like that. Like it's possible to tune these channels in using a cable-ready television in the US, if I recall. TV game, I think this disables the RF switch on the end of the cable plugged into your back of your TV, I think. That is automatic on the newer NESs in the US, but I think you had a switch here. And AC adapter. And does it say how much this thing takes on the input? Nope, HVC 001, made in Japan. It says HVC 002 there, even though it says 1 there. Don't know what that means. Got the rubber feet have like migrated. Kind of think that's hilarious. Don't know why that happens. Does anyone have any idea why that happens exactly? These ones though I could just reposition. So they're good. They're not sticky or anything, which means that they're not gonna cause any kind of glue to come off and like get stuck on my desk or whatnot. And of course, one of the other big differences between these and the US one is that one of the controllers actually has a microphone input in here, and you can talk into this. And actually, some games that has an effect. And I think the audio from the mic just gets overlaid or mixed with the audio coming out of the console itself. And of course, another difference is the cartridges can support expansion audio. Where's that Galaxian cartridge? Here it is. So some of them have an actual extra audio chip or you know, the mapper chip that's in here supports audio as well. And it is fed into the cartridge connector and mixed by the console. And the disk system plugs into this top thing as well with kind of a thing that sits over the console like this, and that does that as well. And on North American NESs, there are some unused pins on the cartridge connector on the actual console, but then it doesn't inherently mix the audio. Like, so if a cartridge sends audio, no cartridges do, but if you have an EverDrive, it sends audio over one of those unused pins. And then what happens is it doesn't go anywhere, it just goes to nothing. So what you can do is you can do a little bit of mod on your NES, and you can Google this if you need to do it. You add a resistor on the bottom side, and that will mix the audio from the cartridge, expansion audio essentially, with the console's audio. It's a pretty simple mod, and I have done that on my NES, the one I have upstairs, because I use the EverDrive on there and I want to hear the expansion audio, which of course only happens because I'm able to play the Japanese games with the EverDrive, which is awesome. And I don't think Galaxian has that. In other words, it doesn't have any kind of mapper that has expansion audio. So this thing has a 3.5mm jack on the back there that allows you to get composite video output. So have, you know, it's stereo audio. So you have audio and video on one cable. Looks like we have some cables that were included. So this actually looks like it's a, whatever, like a 3-ring cable. So it's stereo audio, even though it's not stereo out of the console. Oh, and we have a little power supply here. Very nice. Which is probably a DC power supply. You can use DC on here. Yes, 9 volts DC. That little symbol there with the lines means it's DC. It's a switch mode power supply. And this works, of course, because the AC that's in for the console, it goes through a bridge rectifier immediately. So it's just turned from AC into DC, and there's some caps and stuff like that. So if you give this, or you put 9 volts DC into there, it goes through the same bridge rectifier, so it doesn't matter. You could even, the polarity doesn't even matter. You could have it either way, it would work. The only thing is you have voltage drop because you're going through, what, 2 diodes on the bridge rectifier. So that means you only end up with like 7 volts. But you know what? That's totally fine. And that is because this uses a 7805 voltage regulator, linear one, and it has to bring the voltage down to 5 volts anyways. So if it gets 7.5 volts, it's actually totally fine. Because the original AC power supply that would have come with this would be designed for 100 volts in Japan. And say you plug that in North America here, and I have 122 volts or 123 volts in my house. That means instead of, say, 10 volts AC coming out of that power supply, 12 volts or 13 volts. And once that's rectified, it actually goes up a little bit more, and it just puts a lot more stress on the 7805. And I remember helping a friend years ago fix his Famicom. This was like 25 years ago probably, where he had just used the Japanese power supply without any consideration of the voltage difference, and it ended up killing the 7805. So I just replaced it. I think I put a little heatsink on it. I don't remember if it had a heatsink on it or not. I think it did actually, but it worked. Obviously it would just die again, but I don't think I knew at that point that you could just use a DC power supply like this to get the whole system working. All right, other things that were included here that John sent. Here's that Raspberry Pi he mentioned. Pretty awesome. You know, I have a little a stash of these. Obviously I've been using them a lot less lately, because of course lots of things are Pi Pico. Awesomeness here, but having a 512 gig card, this in and of itself is so useful. So that is really awesome. And then yeah, this I'll put in my little stash of Raspberry Pis, because it's always good to have spare ones of these when you do need them. And of course these are great for emulation, all those things, but these large memory cards though, this will be great for cameras and video and all that kind of stuff. And last but not least, here's the SATA hard drive that John mentioned in the letter. Just looks like a normal 3.5-inch Jobby, a Toshiba. And there it is, 1.0 terabytes, just like John mentioned. Standard SATA connection. It's always good to have these on hand, because I have plenty of SATA drives that I've like shucked. So I took the drive out of the enclosure. My NAS uses a bunch of like drives that were once in enclosures because they were just way cheaper. I think like 14 terabyte drives that I bought for like 99 bucks or something like that. So I brought these external hard drives, I think a bunch of them, you know, shucked them, so took them all apart, which is kind of destructive, unfortunately. But what you're left with often is little converter boards that go from this to USB 3.0, so you get high speed. And I still have some of those kicking around. You plug a 12 volt power supply in and it will run the drive. There's something to be said about these types of drives, you know, just even literally just copying, you know, format this, turn on the encryption, copy a bunch of sensitive data onto it, put it at a friend's house, so it's not even in your house, and therefore at least you have a copy of those files if something bad were to happen, even though obviously it's not updated in real time, blah, 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 but if you put the encryption on there, you put a password on there so people can't just plug it in and use it, it's great. It's great for stuff like that. Okay, that's everything that John sent in. let me get this Famicom hooked up to the RetroTink here so you can see it actually work. You know what I'm noticing here? It looks like this thing needs a peel. Look at this. Is that a peel we have coming towards us right here? I hope this doesn't kind of mess it up. I'm gonna try. All right, that's working. Sometimes what happens is it gets so sketchy or so stuck that it actually doesn't peel very well. In fact, actually it looks like it's still leaving some marks behind. But hey, I think that looks better. And let's just give this thing a little bit of a clean. Considering how old this is, and you know, who knows what life this thing has had. That is really awesome. I guess I should talk about the NES a little bit, as it really has a special place in my heart. Believe it or not, I never grew up with game consoles. And I was really, well, the first game thing I ever had was the VIC-20. And that was the first electronic device hooked up to a TV that I had in my life. And I had played on the Atari 2600 and the ColecoVision and stuff like that. But I basically, I don't know, I never really had that stuff. And I was very interested in games, of course. I mean, what kid wouldn't be? But I was also really interested in programming. So that's why I think my father got me that VIC-20 as my first computer, which I've definitely talked about on the channel before. But that sustained me for a long time. The VIC-20, then we had an Apple II Plus in the house. Then I got my Apple IIc, and that was around like 1984 or so. And I played a ton of games on my Apple IIc, you know, as not great as they are, because Apple II games, you know, really aren't that good. I mean, they're good, and there's adventure games and stuff like that, but graphics and sound, that's where the big letdown is. So at some point in middle school for me, which I think was around 1987 or so, I got an NES. That is the first game console I bought, and I, you know, saved up tons of money, birthdays and chores and whatever, you know, whatever I could. I remember, or maybe I asked for it for my birthday or had to give extra money to help pay for it. I don't quite remember the exact details, but it was the first console I got, and it came with the zapper. So it had the, you know, thing to play Duck Hunt with, and it came with that cart that was both Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. So I played a bunch of that, and it was super fun. I realized, I think at that point, well, I'm trying to think here. 1987, I already had my Apple II GS, so, you know, I had 16-bit graphics and stuff. But I think what was happening is I would go to like friends' houses with NESs, and yeah, even though it was an 8-bit console and it was a little bit, you know, older at that point, it still had incredible games. But the Mega Drive was about to come out, and I'm just trying to think of like the timeline. I'm pretty sure I did not get it in 86. I think it launched in the US in 84, if I recall. Because I remember getting, like I said, Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. And then I remember when Super Mario Brothers 2 came out, that was actually released, and I bought that, or, you know, whatever, I got it as a gift or something like that. And then I had some other games as well, which Bionic Commando, which is still one of my favorite games of all time. I can sit down to this day and play that game start to finish, and, you know, I'm a bit rusty now, so I do die, but I don't have to do a continue usually. Although it's been a while since I've tried to do that, so I might be kind of rusty. But anyways, that, I had Adventure Island by Hudson Soft. I ended up having Super Mario Brothers 3. I definitely had some other games that I can't quite remember, and I definitely had friends with NESs, so we'd like borrow games from each other and stuff like that. So anyhow, I have a real soft spot in my heart for the NES. Now, Super Nintendo came out, what, 1991 in North America, I think. I did not buy a Super Nintendo. By then, I had a Commodore Amiga. I think I had my Amiga 2000 by the time the Super NES came out. I can't remember the exact timelines. It might have been about the same time. But anyways, I was very content playing games on my Amiga. And I'd look at Super NES games and I'm like, oh, that, looks good and stuff. But Amiga had plenty of good games as well. So I was really into the Amiga, and then I had a PC as well. So I'd play games on that. And kind of went from there. I'm trying to think where I went after that. I think, Windows 95 came out, and I had a PC that was, capable of running Windows 95 at that point. Maybe it was a Pentium or something. And of course, that had, I ended up buying a 3D accelerator and stuff like that when those started coming out. So yeah, I was really like into PC gaming. And so in other words, the NES was really my only console of that era. And the next game console I bought, if you can believe it, was the Sony PlayStation. So I went from the NES as a game console to the PlayStation, and then I had, of course, a Dreamcast. And let me think of the correct order. I mean, I had a Dreamcast, PlayStation 2. I ended up getting an Xbox, an original Xbox as well. Then I had a PlayStation 3, and of course I had an Xbox 360, which I still have. Well, I had two because I ended up buying one of the slim ones, so I still have that game console. I love that thing. I had an Xbox One, an Xbone, but I ended up selling that because I realized that, I don't know, at that point I had, you know, I was playing PC games a lot too, and I had, you know, graphic accelerators on there, and I was like, this is dumb because like I don't like buying games on consoles. At least computer games, I can run them for like longer periods of time, like they still work. So I was using Steam, of course, mainly for those. But yeah, so I think the last game console I ever owned actually was the Xbox One, the most modern one, which I then sold. So I still have an Xbox 360, and I never bought a PS4 or a PS5 or any other Xbox after that. It's all about PC gaming now for me. If I game, I don't have much time for that. And I really do love these old things. But I never had any of the other Ataris. I mean, like I said, NES, I went NES to PlayStation when it comes to game consoles. So I have real soft spots in my heart for the NES. And the fact that while this thing is 6502 based, Nintendo was incredibly clever with the design of this thing, with this one here. And the ability, well, the way that the graphics is separated on like a separate bus, basically, than the program data, means that with those mapper chips that get added into these cartridges, it does just more than bank switching. It's able to like bank switch out video memory and allow you to create cool animations and like more colors on screen than you normally would, and all the other extensions and capabilities that are possible on the NES that, say, on its contemporary, the Sega Master System, are not possible. And that's because the Master System has video RAM on the board. There's no video RAM on this, right? It's in the cartridge, in the ROMs of the cartridge. So with the Master System, your graphics are what your graphics are. That's it. You can obviously add more program data, and then you have to do, use the CPU to like try to improve the graphics capabilities and do trickery that way, kind of like in a computer. But with the NES, the cartridge can do a lot of that. And that's really the reason why when you add these new mappers on this, like on Super Mario Bros. 3, was it MMC 5, I think? Am I forgetting? Maybe that was Kirby's Adventure. Anyways, it just allows the system to live on and produce these incredible, fun-to-play games with graphics that are so much better than the original ones. Not to mention it has PCM audio, and I don't know, it's just so much about the NES that I think they got right. And it just meant that the evolution of the console and the games that were able to run on this were just so spectacular. And I think as well, the fact that a launch title for North America was Super Mario Brothers, which, what was the entire size of the game? Like 32K or something like that of game ROM or whatever it was, and like, a little bit of graphic data. It just was so cleverly programmed and such a good game in so many ways that I feel that, well, obviously, we're still playing Super Mario Brothers today, right? Modern versions of it. That game really was so clever and so groundbreaking, and it wasn't till later that other systems even tried to get close to that kind of game quality with platform games and stuff like that. And I think it's debatable even if, say, the Sega Master System even ever had a game that was as good as the launch title for the NES. And then, of course, so many more incredible games came out for the NES with all those mappers that started coming out and extending the functionality. Anyways, yeah, just so cool. There are so many other better channels, of course, that can talk more about this than mine. I'm not game focused. I just have such a soft spot for my heart for these systems. And you know what? It's looking a lot better now. I used a brush here, some Windex, but it looks a lot less kind of grimy than it was. And I think we're ready to try it out now. It's interesting how you can see that this controller here was sitting there, and look how there's a shadow here from where the sun was shining onto the console. So obviously it was getting a lot more exposure, kind of like this direction here. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm ready to go. The video is connected to the RetroTink and speakers. The power's not plugged in yet. Power switch, I don't know which way is on. Maybe that says something in Japanese. It probably tells you turn off the console before you try to eject the cartridge. So here we are on the RetroTink. Let's switch this over to composite. It is in composite already. Let's plug in the DC power cable here. And we'll turn this on with no cartridge. All right, interesting is there's a lot of buzzing on the audio. Well, let's put this in, see what happens here. So Galaxian. So let's put in Galaxian here. Guess we're getting a black screen now. Might be time to deoxit that socket. So this is, well, I mean, I don't know anything about Famicoms, but on regular NES, it's a real problem with the whole cartridge mechanism because it's this front loader thing. Deoxit is absolutely amazing and completely makes those things work so well. So what I'm gonna do is put some deoxit on there, and we'll grab a little cotton bud here. Just run this back and forth on here. Yeah, it's pretty clean actually. Hopefully I actually got some deoxit on there. I don't know if I did. Let's try that again. Okay, I definitely got some on there now. I can see it, kind of a wet look to it. All right, and now that there's some on the cartridge edge connector, just have to kind of plug it in and out a few times into the Famicom here. Okay, I can hear video now in the noise. And I don't see it though. I just had a thought, everyone, that the cable colors don't match. So let's plug into the different ones here. Yes, yes, there we go. Okay, obviously we've got corruption, but that's not a problem. But that's something we can try to figure out in a second. Okay, so obviously the audio here is the yellow and the red, and the white is the video. Let's turn this off and pop this in and out a few more times, or just one more time. All right, hitting reset made it work. Let's just see if it's reliable. Let's put a bit more deoxit right into the socket here. Let's see what that does. Just plug this in a few times. Very interesting. And hitting reset does not make it work. All right, did you see what was happening there? Well, as I mentioned, there's a separate data bus for the graphics versus the program data. And if you have bad connections on the graphics side, you get corrupted graphics like we were seeing there, but the program is still running. And that's what's happening here. So when I move this, the game hasn't crashed. You see, it's playing fine, but just moving the cartridge here is, well, the PPU, picture processing unit, it loads the data right out of the graphics ROMs that are in here. It's separate from the program data. And, well, let's see if we have audio here. Yes, we do. All right. Yeah, good. It's working well. Cartridge feel, or cartridge. Oh, we got a little glitch there because I bumped it. The controller feels really good. Let me turn the audio down a little bit. Controller feels really good, and this is where the NES, like when it was first released, I guess the whole idea of it was to really create arcade accurate ports. Okay, stop it. At the time, and I think they did it. I mean, this is a great version of this game here. Like I'm not super familiar with the Namco original arcade game, but I have to imagine it's probably relatively similar. Oh, darn it. Don't I get picked up by that thing? The yellow ship up there and the one I just crashed into, and it like gives me two? Or is that Galaga? I can never remember the difference between the Galaga and Galaxian. Anyhow, let's see here. It's very playable. Controller feels really nice. Now with that corrupting graphics, and I put so much deoxit in there, we could have a dodgy cartridge, or there could be like a bad solder joint on the connector maybe? Now why is this so interesting that this is so finicky, but clearly it's only on the graphics side because the game is running the entire time here. Yeah, so it must be the other game where that guy gives you two ships. Anyhow, it's cool to see that this is actually running. Now, theoretically, we could open this up. I wonder how you do that. Is there a screw? Yeah, I don't know if there's like a screw here. Because if there were, what we could do is we could swap out the ROMs in here for like Super Mario Brothers, for instance. How does this come apart? Yeah, this must have clips. I think I see that the clip is right there. Let's pop this apart here. Looks like I'd have to go under with this plastic spudger here. But I think the plastic tool is not good enough to open it. So how about one of these metal spudgers here? Mine's a little bent up here. Oh yeah, there we go. All right, well that was kind of violent, but I did get that clip open. Kind of chewed up the case a little bit and drew blood in the process. Kind of tells you that it's a good idea to wear gloves when you do stuff like this. Trying to see if there's an easier way to do this. Clip is definitely there. Okay, there we go. That was really quite difficult. And still seems to be held together. There's not a screw, is there? Looks like there's probably a clip there and there. Well, I think I got it open enough to get the cartridge open at least. And there it is. There's the Namco cartridge. And yep, we have program ROM and the character ROM, or the graphics ROM right there. So as I mentioned, separate connections to the system. And I guess first thing let's do is let's try cleaning this a little bit here. So my preferred way to clean these types of contacts, which are not gold plated by the way, is just put a little Deoxit on them and use a little piece of magic eraser here and just simply buff them. Didn't really have much of an effect, to be honest. Still not looking super great. Let's try a pencil eraser here. Not really improved either. So when it comes to inserting this back into the console, I didn't pay attention which way it goes. You might think it just goes in like this, right, with the chips facing towards you. I'm not sure that that's actually, the case. And okay, it is actually, because there are sort of like keyed holes there. And when you close this, it's like that with the label facing towards you and the chips themselves face towards you. So let's try this in the console here. And I'd like to see if we still have that dodgy connection problem here. Nope, it's fine now. All right, well that was it. I guess I just really needed to get it out of the cartridge and clean it, you know, with the magic eraser and the Deoxit. And that's because those were not gold coated. If they were, they wouldn't have all that oxidation on there. And this is pretty good now. It seems pretty stable. Neat. I do notice as well is that there's like a LED that shines through. So I guess the little mod that's in there to allow this thing to do composite video has like little amplifiers and stuff on there. Probably replaces an RF modulator, I'm assuming. And yeah. So yep, there we go. We have a working Famicom. And the thing is, I love Galaga and all that. I love Galaxian. That's what we're playing here, not Galaga. And I love it has their own branding. And yes, that's because that whole licensing thing we had in North America wasn't that in Japan. So Namco actually made the cartridge, the box, everything. And that's why they were able to put their own mapper chips in the Japanese releases that had the extra sound channels that Nintendo never did. All we ever got in North America, I think, are Nintendo branded mappers because they had to make the cartridges, or it was all officially licensed and all that garbage. Now, what I could do is there's no other logic on here, right? So these are just two ROM chips. We could easily just change this over to be, by the way, I think these are for selecting whether it scrolls horizontally or vertically. See, H or V. And what's the 256? Maybe that's the ROM size. But this controls the mode of the game, whether it scrolls horizontally like Super Mario Brothers or a vertical scroller game. Because originally the NES or the Famicom doesn't do both. That was a hack. That was actually a hack, or like a workaround that the programmers figured out how to do both in later games. But originally it was physically set. Anyhow, we could just pop these off and reinstall some new EPROMs that have basically Super Mario Brothers on here. Pretty sure these are just like 27 256s. I guess the issue is while this fits in here like that, even with sockets it would work, but definitely I couldn't put sockets and put this back together. So I think I am not going to modify this original Japanese cartridge. I will just buy myself a Famicom EverDrive that is in this form factor, or maybe I can find an adapter and just use the North American ones. This become a top loader. And yeah, And let's just double check with the cartridge all back together that this still works. And there it is, looking good. No more graphical corruption, just Deoxit to the rescue. And I probably could have used, I don't know, a lot of rubbing with a Q-tip and made this work, but sometimes you just gotta take it apart to make sure, I'm turning the sound down, to make sure that those contacts are as clean as they can possibly be. So John, thank you very much for saying the Famicom. It's almost like now I'm gonna have to try to find myself a disk system. I don't know. It's not something that's been on the top of my list because with the EverDrive, I can play the disk system games on my US NES anyways, and I have the expansion audio mod done to it, so I don't really need a disk system because then you gotta get these discs and all that stuff. But that would kind of complete the awesomeness of this Famicom and how darn cool it is. And I suppose once we are back in like sunny weather again, it's now autumn here, so that's not really possible. Full-on retro bright would be required for this thing just to kind of get it looking good. Although there's those stickers on there, and I don't know how you really fix that. So if anyone has any tips about getting the color of this thing back, or just should I leave it the way it is, then definitely let me know. Anyhow, John, thank you very much for sending this in. I really appreciate it, and the other stuff and all the candy, and I'm really sorry that it sat around, but believe me, it's not gonna go to waste. I'm still gonna eat this stuff, and even though it's a big melded mass of chocolate and nuts and stuff, it tastes delicious, so I'll be eating that and the other things. And then Ross, thank you very much for sending those chips. I really appreciate it. I think the reason Ross sent that stuff in is Ross was just like, I'm done working on stuff like this, and I just don't need all this stuff. Instead of just tossing it out or e-wasting it, he thought it'd be better if I could use it for fixing other stuff. And absolutely, I can do that. So that is really freaking awesome. I still have a box sitting next to me here that is absolutely just sort of packed with smaller items here, and there's some more bigger items over there. So I'm slowly chipping away at it. I feel like I'm making progress. I'm opening stuff faster than things are coming in. So that's a positive. I just have to keep myself from ever letting things accumulate like this again, because it starts to weigh on me, and I feel really bad that people have gone through the effort to send stuff in and I haven't opened it yet, and especially when there's candy and stuff in it, that goes bad. So anyways, thank you very much to everyone who sent stuff in. If I haven't shown it yet, don't worry, it's all here, which is why I like this thing from John here. It's been in my basement for 10 months now. And I have stuff here that has been here for quite a long time, like this one here is from May, and I think there might be stuff that's even from last year. So anyways, there we go. If you like this video, thumbs up. If you didn't know what to do, huge thanks to my patrons and my supporters that make it possible to do this full time. Without them, I wouldn't be doing this because I'd have to have a job. But they make it possible, and I feel like the luckiest person around who's able to do this because of all the generous support of people like you. If you haven't subscribed to my channels, I really appreciate it because it really is a huge help. Just that one click, and I think it's gonna be that. So stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.